Welcome to Emotional Support. I'm Alessandra Torresani, and today's episode is, I have to say, a very special treat for myself. It'll be a treat for you as well. We have top secret government agent to the stars, David Haggerty, back in the studio. And I am so excited because we've been able to catch up a little bit here and there. You're a dad of two now. Life has been totally chaotic, but this is our moment to finally take a breath, catch up, talk about some hot topics, and answer some fan questions. So I'm so excited. David, welcome back to the pod.
I haven't done this in so long, so
It's been a bit.
I apologize to everyone in advance.
It's been a bit for me too. It's been a year. So don't worry. It's not just you. This is I'm getting back in the groove.
I mean, it's been a year, but it feels like 5 minutes in my life.
I know.
I feel like given a year ago to where we are now, I should give
It's
some
so true.
disclosures.
Give some disclosure.
I'm not a top secret government scientist.
You're an open government scientist.
I currently am still employed by the National Institutes of Health. If you've read the news in the last year, some things have changed. I have no project disclosures to make about what I'm working on and can speak freely. And I would like to say that for everyone listening, um, the opinions and viewpoints that I have are mine and not those of the federal government.
There you go. There you go. We got it all
But
out and
happy to talk
open.
about anything.
Oh my gosh.
Had some meetings with some people internally in the new administration. They obviously
Sure.
have a very, I don't know what
Different
word I want to
viewpoint.
use.
Different viewpoint maybe from you.
Some things are very different.
Huh?
The people that I have talked to internally, we agree to disagree.
Wow. Okay.
And a big part of what's happening right now within the government is you should be able to say what you want if you have data to support that viewpoint. Like, we
Interesting.
actually want to talk about facts and what's going on. And I'll do the sound bit of
Yeah.
the Make America Healthy Again movement. Like, MAHA is becoming a big thing internally. And that means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And I'm sure this will sort of play into some fan questions, but
Sure.
we're trying to take a real, honest, truthful, scientific stab at some things that are plaguing American society right now, and health and disease, and we're happy to talk about those things. The current director is thinking about starting a podcast with scientists internally at the NIH.
Wow.
There's some way you might see me on a different podcast, not to cheat on you, but
Wow.
there's things that have happened. So we'll leave it at that,
Wow.
and wherever we
We'll
get, we
leave it
get.
at that. Well, I'll say that, there are, I feel like tensions are very high in America. Tensions are very high in the world. And I don't want to get into the tensions, but what I do want to get into is I do want to talk about health. And I do want to talk
Mhm.
about the things that have happened, I feel like, in the year that has changed since we've been on the podcast. One of the most popular episodes we had that we discussed, and I highly recommend everyone to go back and talk about, I highly recommend everyone go back and listen to it, is our conversation on Ozempic, on the weight loss medications, on Manjaro, and all these things. Because at that time when we released the podcast episode, I think we were one of the first, and I'm going to say this, to actually talk about what it was, facts, and talk about the positivity behind it, because everyone was like, these celebrities, they're just trying to get skinny fast. And you were like, look, and there was a shortage at the time of the Ozempic and of the, all the different types of medications. And I think what we've seen is so many people have benefited from this, the health, the awareness, and people are able to get the medication. So can we do like a quick jump on what's
Yeah,
happened in a year with those kinds of weight loss medications, and not just weight loss, but for, diabetes, for,
we talk
your heart
about it.
health, everything. Yes.
We talk about it internally every day.
Really?
So,
Wow.
another disclosure. I am currently a scientific lead support staff on a clinical trial that's looking at GLP-1, which is
Okay.
the medicine. Like Ozempic is the
Sure.
name brand, the
Sure.
actual like underlying medicine, and how it might potentially reduce drinking alcohol in a population study across the United States. There was some early data that came out maybe a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, with a collaborator that we have at University of North Carolina that did a very smaller study looking at the effects of Ozempic on drinking, and it reduced binge drinking by half.
Wow.
So if this holds up,
Now wait,
and again, this is a big
can I ask a
if.
stupid
Yeah.
question?
No, yeah.
When you're talking about the binge drinking, are you talking about like someone had taken the in quote unquote Ozempic or Manjaro, whatever it was,
Mhm.
and they went out for a night of drinking and they knew when to stop? What is
This
that?
is
What is
like people who are obviously enrolled in a clinical trial. So they
okay?
self-identify or have been identified by a doctor that they have some sort of alcohol misuse.
Okay.
Alcohol use disorder is this like spectrum term that we
Sure.
use. So they're problematic drinkers. We measure their intake in number of drinks. So
Okay.
if you have one shot, that's a drink. If you have one glass of wine, that's a drink. If you have one beer, that's a drink. And just total number of drinks. It's like if you were having 10 drinks, you're not having 5 drinks after you're taking Ozempic. And that's like oversimplified, and you can go look at the
Sure.
data. It's publicly available, these sorts of things. But if this shakes out and it works, these medicines will be the best treatment we've ever developed to treat alcohol use disorder. Full stop.
And would this be something that I guess my first question is how long does medical research have to be? How much data does there have to be? Like how long does that take to decide?
These trials we're multi-site. We're talking thousands of people. This is going to be an ongoing trial for another 2-3 years, probably.
Okay.
We have time points where we can actually open the trial up and look at the data to see some preliminary results. We pre-register all of this stuff, so it's not like we're like messing with the data. We're just taking sort of a snapshot of where we think we are through the
Sure.
trial. This is another 3-4 years of data that we're going to collect before we make an official recommendation sort of at the
Sure.
FDA level. And when I say we, I mean the government as a whole. Like, I don't work for the FDA. I don't get to make
Right.
that
Of
choice.
course.
But I mean, like, private inpatient centers. So like the big sort of 28-day detox and care facilities that are privatized are run by a company called Karen with a C. This is where John Mulaney famously went.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So like this is like, from all the way from court ordered rehab to people sort of just showing up and saying, I need to go through a detox program. They have started just giving it. They're not even waiting. They're
Wow. So
saying that
they'll
we've seen
like
enough.
day one, you check
Day
into
one, you can get
rehab,
it now.
you start. Wow.
Um,
Wow.
and I mean, like, we're starting to flush out like what Ozempic is actually doing to your brain. Like, it changes your dopamine signaling and the accumbens, like all of the things that we know about reward pathways in your brain. Ozempic actually seems to have a real, measurable, repeatable effect on what's going on in your brain.
And now is
This
this
isn't just some
Ozempic
like
or the
magic.
GL?
This is
Right.
just GLP. Like, I'm referring to it as a Ozempic because that's what
Okay.
most people
No,
know
I'm
it
just
as. But
curious.
like all of these drugs, whether it's Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound, whatever the next generation that they're going to come out with, are essentially all GLP-1 agonists. So it's like that's what it's binding in your body, and it's changing a bunch of things. And we're starting to understand the side effect profile,
Which are
why everyone that takes it is essentially complaining about GI symptoms, whether
gastrointestinal.
that's
Okay.
whether that's bloating, whether that's feeling
Constipated,
constipated, but like some sort of like in a subset of patients, you'll get people that feel nausea.
Hmm.
And that sort of moves on a scale from like I feel dizzy to like I'm actually vomiting.
Wow.
We figured that whole thing out. We know
Okay.
exactly in the brain where it's binding. There is literally a center in the back part of your old sort of, rodent brain that controls what we call amnesis, or like the actual physical muscle control over when you vomit. There's a little bit of an off target effect. So the next generation of these drugs are going to look to actually block that effect so you can take it and the side effects of feeling nauseous should go away. It's like we're really starting to understand what the
Well,
hell
here's
we're
a question.
doing with this drug, and
Right.
it's going to only get better.
So
So, like, if
here's a
you think
question.
Ozempic has already changed the world, like, wait
It's
10
gonna
years and it's gonna get better.
Okay, so
This is
let's
not an ad
live in
for
a
a pharmaceutical
no,
company, but
no,
this
no,
is just like, if you
no,
look at the
no.
data, this is what's happening.
Right. So let's live in a world, right, where, like, for instance, me, right? Yes, I put on weight since having a baby and all that stuff, but I'm not needing the medication to lose weight. But let's say I have, and this is hypothetical because I don't have this, but say I was, you know, an alcoholic and I was like, I'm trying to stop and I have to go into rehab. And day one, they start giving this to me. If I'm already a tiny person and I don't want to
Yes.
lose weight, or even if I'm a larger person and this is my body and I love who I am and I don't want
Yes.
to lose weight, is there a way where that's going to stop or that's always going to be a part of the GL?
With this generation of medicines, like when I'm talking about generation, I'm talking about like you have
Everything.
a drug
Right.
that binds a specific receptor in your body.
Right.
When you drug that specific receptor, the GLP-1 receptor in your body, you're going to lose weight. There's no way around it.
Okay.
So there's a dosing scheme that you can use. Like when they're using these drugs at Karen or in inpatient centers that are private right now, they're not using the 1 milligram dose that makes you shed a bunch
Right.
of weight super quickly. So like people are starting to understand the dosing range. They're starting to create individualized doses. You see compounding pharmacies. We don't have to get into the intellectual property lawsuits that are happening around these drugs, but like what effectively you're seeing, like Eli Lilly included now, is that you can get it in a vial and pull it into a syringe. So you can get very tight control over how much you're actually injecting into your body. So if you're losing too much weight, you can pull back on the dose. If you want to lose more weight quickly, you can push up on the dose. It's starting to make a lot more sense. So
Now, another stupid question,
this ain't going away. Trust me.
I know it's not going away, and I'm okay with it not going away, but I've noticed that there are a lot of companies in which that have also reached out to me to do, ads and stuff like that
Yeah,
where
yeah.
they're not in excuse me, they're not the injectables, they are
Oral.
like
Yeah.
gummies or
They're
orals
working
or
on a
something.
pill. Yeah.
Is there any effect in the gummies? Like, is there really anything in those? Like, is it really strong enough? Or is it kind of like your
I
body
mean, like, how
digests it?
much do you and the listeners want a
I want truth.
graduate level understanding of bioavailability and pharmacology?
No, I don't need no, I just mean like
The
yes or no. Like it's
formulation
not gonna work.
the formulation is different. It won't be as effective. There's some early data that's come out that says that the first generation of the pills that they're working on work, but aren't as good as the injectables.
Mm,
They will work.
they will work.
It will work.
Interesting.
It will work.
Interesting.
I mean, like, we're talking like 80% as effective. So like if you were
Right.
taking the, injectable dose and you lost, 100 pounds, if you take the
Sure.
oral pill, you're going to lose 80.
Right, 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 right.
So like we're talking about the margins right now. We're not talking about like, is this work going to work or not? Like it's going to work. The question is like you have some benchmark with some route of
Right.
administration. How good is this route going to be? There's a lot of things that are at play. The two major ones are people don't like sticking themselves with needles.
I was
So
about to say a lot of people can't
this
do
is the
that.
push to create a pill or a gummy form of it. And the manufacturing and shipping costs associated with a liquid vial injectable that must stay cold are very expensive and difficult to deal with.
Sure.
Versus if you create a pill that's stable at room temperature, you can put it in a UPS box and ship it freight
And
or
it'll
air.
go. Right.
So like the cost comes way down. So this is more of like the business economics
Mm-hmm.
of pharmaceutical manufacturing, but the hope is, again, not a drug rep but like the hope is if they get cheaper to make, manufacture and ship, that the price of the drugs that the consumer sees or the insurance company sees will also come down. So the thought is they'll pass on those savings. Whether that happens, I don't know, because demand for these things is going to be so high where they could probably just say, like, if they really wanted to, like, no, this is the price. Like, screw you guys. We're just
Yeah.
going to make a,
Right.
150% margin on these drugs.
I
But
mean,
like,
maybe.
there's
Yeah.
a whole different conversation of like, drug pricing and costs. But like the hope is that by switching to an oral or a gummy formulation, something that
It
you
would
can
get
inject,
out to more.
that they can ramp up production as well as reduce costs on shipping, manufacturing, and delivery.
Something that I have been I think, full disclosure, fighting with a lot of men in my life and a lot of family members in my life is a lot. I've been fighting this thing, telling them that there's all this research that, when you hit 40 years old, your hormone imbalance changes, all this stuff. And I've heard a lot of people, and we've heard it from a lot of friends, especially men who are around his age, that are using these GLPs to balance out their hormones. Is that something there's any truth there, or is that totally false?
I mean, like anecdotally speaking, like this is what we're doing. Like we're trying to figure out, like, like if you were to draw a chart of your metabolism, like every molecule in your body, how does it process food? How do you generate energy?
Yeah.
Like every eighth grader in biology in high school learns about the Krebs cycle, about how you turn sugar into energy and all this
Yeah.
stuff. Like we're pulling levers there with these
Hmm.
drugs, like it is not an easy answer just because it is so complicated, like how your metabolism
Sure.
works. And now you have to layer in, how do you age and how do you use fat deposits and how do you
Hmm.
convert sugar to fat if you don't use them? And you have like all of these energy sources that you use in your body, and we're plugging in one single molecule into your body and saying, like, how does that whole network change? So it's confusing. We need to do more work on giving you a specific answer of how it's changing.
Yeah.
But I think anecdotally and theoretically speaking, like, yeah, like as we age, our muscle composition changes, our how we use energy changes, how we store fat changes, your gut epithelium, like the cells in your intestinal wall, and like all this
Yeah.
stuff, they all change and they all age. And if this drug is helping, you know, change how you use energy or insulin resistance or like all these sort of things that it was designed to do, you're going to have downstream effects for other unrelated
Right.
molecules in your body.
Right.
So like I can't give you the stepwise mechanism from A to B right now, but I think anecdotally, yeah, this is probably true that it's happening.
Well, and I mean, it is true, I feel, and you can, vouch for me and tell me whether I'm like a crazy person or not, but I hear this all the time. I went through this with my cousins. I've like seen it with my husband. Like I've seen it with so many men in my life. Like they're so scared to talk about, losing testosterone, losing, estrogen, but I mean, like losing hormone imbalance and
No,
their
yeah.
moods changing. But like, I see it like the second men in my life turn 40, like I'm telling you, I see such a difference in who they are, how they interact. I saw it with my dad. Like I see it. And I feel like it's such a scary thing. And it seems like such a woman's problem to be like, oh, my hormones are in balance. Like we're not talking about it from like a man's point of view. So is that true where you have to really start focusing and putting true, focus on your hormone health as a man when you hit a certain age? I know we always laugh and say, "Oh, he's having a midlife crisis." Like, but it's like maybe he's just having a fucking hormone imbalance and like
Yeah,
maybe
I
that
mean,
needs to
like,
change.
look, like I hope when I hit 45, I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna buy a Porsche, like, and like go full
Go for it.
midlife crisis on
Yeah.
it. But like, I think the thing we're struggling to understand as scientists who study human biology and what's healthy and what's unhealthy is like we actually have a really poor understanding of what, put this in sort of air quotes, like proper aging looks like.
Right.
Like if you were to ask me like what's the correct hormone balance of a healthy male at the age of 45,
It's
I
all
don't
different.
know.
Right.
And like if we take a bunch of 45-year-old men from across the world and sample their hormones, you're going to get way different responses.
So maybe it's not an issue and I'm just like
No,
seeing
I
it.
think it's an issue. So like
Yeah.
again, like not to like turn this into a data science podcast, but like the newest piece of data that everyone is really excited about is like people are trying to answer this question. The easiest way to do it right now is to use model organisms. So like if you look at mice and you let them age and you take a bunch of different time points, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 16 months, 18 months, 24 months, and like look at the whole body and say like what's aging, what cells are dying the fastest, what hormones are changing, where we're starting to realize that like what might be the cause of neurodegeneration or Alzheimer's disease. Like part of that story and understanding is that the blood-brain barrier, like I now have to introduce the idea of every medical student in America takes immunology. Immunology 101, and I don't agree with this, but this is what it says in the textbook, is that the brain is an immune privileged organ. Like you have a barrier essentially that keeps the stuff from your neck down out of your brain. There's like a filtration system that lets things into your brain or not. There's a permeability that you have to focus on. There's, all these sorts of things that get filtered out in your peripheral system that don't touch your central system, which
Mm-hmm.
is your brain and spinal cord. That barrier, as you age, starts to break down. Those cells express GLP-1 receptors. They express a lot of things, but like there is a mechanism that suggests that maybe inflammation and living in levels of increased inflammation break down that barrier and it allows more toxins into your central nervous system.
Wow.
And those toxins might be the driver of inflammation in your brain, cause cells to die, like might be a primary driver of things like Alzheimer's disease. Like it's hormones, it's your immune system, it's all of these, it's all these things. It's
Yeah.
wildly complicated, but like we're starting to see pretty compelling evidence that like the cells that break down first are cells that are sensing or regulating what's going on with your peripheral metabolism.
Wow.
So if you take a drug like Ozempic that is primarily drugging your peripheral immune system
Mm-hmm.
and like metabolic stores and insulin and all these things that are signaling back to your brain, like in many ways it might be neuroprotective.
Mm.
So like this idea of like, like I don't know how it's exactly regulating your hormone balance or what your brain is telling your body to make and release into your system and making you feel better and like all these sorts of things, slowing down aging in air quotes, but like there's probably going to be a link there. And we need a couple more years to figure this out. And like there are many other like GLP-1 is a peptide. It's a
Mm-hmm.
protein that floats around in your body in the same way that insulin is. There are hundreds of them.
Mm.
Like
So,
we've got insulin and we've got GLP-1 and we've got GIP, which is the other drug in trizepatide. Like we've done three. There's hundreds more that we're going to balance happens and go from there. But I think there is like this inherent link of yes, it will start to mess with things if you pick the wrong target in a bad way. If you pick the right target, probably in a really good way, that's helpful for your hormone balance, helpful for aging, and probably neuroprotective.
but if you have, so another like hot topic, I think that this is all like related to, which I'm so excited we're going to talk about this, is the hot topic is everyone's looking so young. How are they doing it? How does Lindsay Lohan look so young? How does Anne Hathaway, like, how does like X, Y, and Z? Well, I hate to break it to you all. I'm sure that they all had mini facelifts, like half facelifts. That's one thing. But the other thing that I know that so many people are doing, um, so NAD is, I'm going to have you explain like a little bit what it is, but I want you to know, I was like so confused of what NAD was. So I went to this event, okay, like side
Mhm.
note, that was at the Aloe Gym. This is not sponsored. I wish I was part of the Aloe Gym, but I'm not. But anyways, it's like this private influencer gym. You get there, you have to be like invited. I was invited through another friend of mine who was hosting a sound bath event there. I went there. Then afterwards,
God,
they
I need to
had,
move to LA.
you need to move
This
to
is
LA.
just
It's like your fucking jam.
banana land.
Yeah. So then they had like they had sandwiches, they had juices, and then they had True Niagen sponsoring it. And True Niagen is like a brand of NAD that's like the highest quality, the best of the best. So they had the drips there where you did the IV drips where you sat there for 45 minutes, or they had the pills. And I asked them, do you have a shot? Because I don't have time. I have to get back to my daughter. I've always wanted to try the NAD. I know one shot is literally not going to make a difference, but I wanted to try it anyways. So I got a shot on my arm and I was like, oh, I have all this energy. And then they sent me the pills to come home with. So I was so excited to try it. And I don't know what I think of it yet, but I have a few questions for you.
Mhm.
First, I want to talk about NAD. Does it work? And then second, I want to talk about the side effects. So let's start first with the what is NAD? Why is it such a phase? And is it actually doing anything to reverse our age?
Why do these podcasts turn into biology lessons? I
I
don't
don't know. I
know.
love because maybe it's something that I'm so curious about. Like
Yes,
I was
yes,
so obsessed with math and science that for me,
yes.
this is like revving me up and getting me so pumped.
Okay. From memory, I don't have a textbook in front of me, but when you ingest sugar,
Yes.
right, we break that down to essentially glucose, which is a
Right.
6 carbon molecule that looks like a little, hexagon that has some oxygens and hydrogens and stuff hanging around. The Krebs cycle takes that glucose molecule and breaks it down, right? In that process, there's, I think, 6 steps, 7 steps. I'm sure they've added more depending on who you ask. Again, I don't have the textbook in front of me, and I'm not a, metabolic scientist. I cosplay one on the internet. In that process, you have a bunch of enzymes and coenzymes that help physically break those chemical bonds. And when you break those bonds, what you do is you create energy. There are a bunch of cofactors for those enzymes that help shuttle around essentially elements, hydrogens, oxygens, break bonds, form bonds, remove energy, add energy back to the system to efficiently turn that glucose into energy. If you run the cycle in reverse, it's
Mhm.
photosynthesis. You take energy
Right.
from the sun and you create sugar.
Sure.
We eat sugar and we turn it into energy. In that process, you have two cofactors, which are NAD and FAD, and you can oxidize them or reduce them into NAD plus or NADH or FAD plus and FADH. Those are the biological molecules that make your whole metabolic cycle run. So by consuming these cofactors, like if you go to CVS and buy to the pharmacy, like one of the big cofactor enzymes is coenzyme Q. You can buy,
Yes.
coenzyme Q. It's been on the shelves for 20 years.
Yes. My grandma used to take it. Yes.
What we're doing here by directly supplementing those molecules into your body is you're making your metabolism run faster. Now, like
So
there
the
will be a
NAD is
ceiling
making it faster.
effect. There will be a ceiling effect where you can't drug it anymore. But like let's say you're in some sort of bad metabolic state and you start to take these drugs, you're NAD deficient in the same way that you might be vitamin D deficient.
Sure. Which I
And
am.
you
So yes.
yeah, and like you add those things to your body, that cycle is going to run more efficiently and faster.
So how do you know if you're NAD deficient? Do you have to do a
You
blood
don't.
test?
You don't. I mean, like, this is the thing. Like, in the same way that you're taking vitamins or supplements, like, again, like, we don't know
It's
what
a
the
gamble.
baseline is.
Right, right.
Like, you can do minimal damage by taking these things, so it doesn't really matter. Like, I don't know off the top of my head, like, what the solubility of these things is. So, like, some vitamins that you take, like, when you go to, Erewhon and buy the, like, monstrous thing, like, most of those things you just pee out. Like,
Yeah,
if you have
of
too much
course.
of them, like, you filter and pee them out.
Sure.
So, like, again, like, the safety profile of these things is very minimal. But if you juice your body in the same way that you have like an electrolyte drink when you're
Mhm.
dehydrated to like raise those levels back up, like you feel more hydrated, you have a burst of energy, like these sorts of things, like what the life course of looks like this, like, but like what you're essentially doing is you're consuming a molecule that is helping your metabolism run.
But now is this
And this
a
is
big
every cell in your body, your hair, your skin, your
right.
eyes, your liver,
So
your like,
that's why that's
like
where the
this is
anti-aging comes in. That's when people are like, "Oh, I'm looking so much younger because it's like speed regenerating."
they're essentially trying to make their cells run faster and
Mhm.
like a very, broad painting stroke here, like broad brushstrokes, but like what they're doing and what you're going to continue to see is this is not only what the people want and are interested in, but like this is where the science is leading us is once we learn to play, like if you think about your metabolism being like a gas or a brake, like once we learn to play with that and those molecules, now you can start creating supplements that like actually work and where we actually know. You could take a blood test or a urine test to be like, what am I actually deficient in?
Right,
And then
right.
like take those enzymes or
And
cofactors as a
keep going.
supplement and run that out over time. Like we're not totally there yet, but that's the holy grail. Like, can we actually understand what a healthy metabolism looks like? And then can we measure that? And then can we create drugs, molecules, cofactors, etc., to put into people to help them boost them back up to a level where they're feeling better? And it will be sort of an imperfect science, but like this is what you're seeing happen. I mean, it's face care for
Yes.
your insides. Like that's
Right.
where we're going.
Right.
And
But
like that creeps some people out. And for other people who have like beautiful faces who, look 20 in their 60s, they're like, yeah, it works. And
yeah.
like your mileage may vary, but like as we get better at this, like these things are going to continue to get better. So like I'm not co-signing NAD. Like I don't know specifically in you as an individual that's taking this, whether you need it or it will help. But it sounds like for like on the net, on the population average, like it's well tolerated and people seem to like it.
So let me counter
Yes.
this. So I love the school of TikTok. I love TikTok science. And it's so funny. I was listening to an episode of Jeff Lewis Alive, the interior designer, because they're all obsessed with anti-aging and they have all these like whatever. They have all this stuff. I love it. It's my obsession. Someone had called in because they were talking about how he does the peptide shots and he does NAD shots and all this stuff, right? And he was like, it's helping with my anti-age. And this woman called in and she's like, I'm a nurse. I believe she was a nurse. And she said, do not take NAD. She says, because what it's actually doing is if you have the cancer genome or if you have that in you, right? Like, and it's dormant, by you taking NAD, you're speeding this up and you are then multiplying the cancer to come faster. That was all I needed to hear to like spiral to then my TikTok algorithm coming up of all these like pharmacists that are like, oh, by the way, like, if you have cancer, breast cancer in your family, if you start taking NAD, it's going to pop up even faster. And I was like, oh my God, I can't take it. I started spiraling. So can
Um,
you argue like why that's
yeah,
like
yeah.
you shouldn't listen to the science of TikTok or like maybe there is some truth to that? Because for me, I'm still breastfeeding at 3 years old. And I know that there's no like true nutrients that are going to lady and it's for comfort and it's like once in a blue moon it happens. But I'm like, oh my God, like life is so precious to me. I don't want anything to happen to me. Is this NAD going through my breast milk to my daughter? Like, oh my God. And the panic arises.
This
I'll
is,
leave you with that.
I'm staring off into space because
Yes.
my initial reaction is that's bullshit.
Okay. Okay. That's what I
But,
needed to hear.
this is not medical advice. And like, look, like if you take anything, everything has an LD50, lethal dose 50, where if you give 100 people a specific dose of water, they will die. Like there's a known quantity for every substance in the world that like theoretically you can compute or can physically measure. You don't ever want to get anywhere near that dose. Whatever we're talking about. NAD plus, NAD, whatever you're supplementing, if you take too much, it's going to be bad.
Right. But how do you know what too much is then?
Yeah, I can look it up if you really want me to. You know what
But
I
I mean,
mean? Like,
even if it's just like
so,
I think on
so
the bottle it says 300 milligrams, like
yeah,
a
again,
day.
I don't know the LD50
Right.
for NAD off the top of my head.
Sure.
This is just general advice
Sure.
of like if you
Sure.
take too much of anything, it's probably going to be bad for you. In a world where, and this is specific to the example you gave me, but also more generalizable to
Sure.
what we've been talking about when it comes
Yeah.
to metabolism and hormone balance and all this sorts of stuff. If you start to accelerate your metabolism, and then if that acceleration in metabolism causes what you can think of as cell turnover. You have skin cells. They grow, they die. Like all the skin that you're looking at right now, dead skin cells. There's a layer underneath that's alive that comes to the front, and you have this recycling process. If you speed up that process of making new cells, removing unhealthy cells, and like making that flywheel move faster, if you view cancer as a disease of cell division, right?
Hmm.
Like you have bone marrow inside your bones that create immune cells. If you do that faster and you have some underlying risk for cancer, leukemia, which is cancer of bone marrow cells, and you start to make that process move faster, like statistical probability will tell you that the rates of cancer will go up if you speed everybody up.
Mm. Okay.
Does NAD cause cancer? No.
No. No.
But playing with the levers might make the cancer rates go up or down.
I
Like
think that
they're
right.
similar, but it's not causal. And like this
They
is
were
what we
saying in the
run into all the
right.
time in research of like, like to stick on the bone example, every single osteoporosis medicine that slows down your bones degrading causes cancer. It's like an unavoidable consequence of playing with that biology. But like, like what's better? Breaking both of your hips and both of your femurs because you have like we're playing with cost trade-offs here.
Hmm.
So like from a causal perspective, no. How many people have had their entire genome sequence, both introns and exons, and know their genetically defined cancer risk? Very few. It's not just genetics, it's genetics plus environment, plus lived
Sure.
experience, plus diet, plus
Sure.
all these other things. Like to make a very strong claim that if you take this thing, you will get cancer.
Well,
It's
I
like
think that they were
actually
saying that they saw that there
pretty
was like a high
hard.
when they were testing those who were living with cancer, they did this one test that it was showing high levels of NAD.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Again, if you have a bunch of cancer cells in your body, you have more cells, right?
So you would have more
Like
NAD.
someone without cancer, plus someone with a metastatic lump of cells in their body, like cancer cells eat energy.
So you would have a higher dose of NAD
Yeah,
in your
like
body, like period.
if you look at people who have
Right.
cancer, their metabolism is different.
Right.
So, like
Right.
again,
Right.
like all these things are like inextricably linked. But like from a causal standpoint, if you
No.
like spin people's metabolisms up, is that going to drive cancer rates? Like
No.
in some fringe cases, maybe. But like
Right.
from a like, you know what I'm saying? It's
General
like
standpoint.
that's what I'm saying. Like, is everyone with a predisposed to have like a really high metabolism who can eat whatever they want and stay super thin and run ultra marathons? Do they all get
Sure.
cancer? No.
No.
So like,
No. But I
I'm
needed to
not
hear
gonna
this, you
I'm
know?
not gonna give you like a yes or no here, but like if you follow the logic, I don't know, but like probably not.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
something to pay attention to.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I'm also like there are many other examples where you can think about taking specific enzymes
And it speeds up. Yeah.
and it speeds up or slows down and like then you can do some, like factor analysis and cancer is a covariate way out, with tens of thousands of people and catch something. But like again, like not medical advice, but like no, don't worry about that.
Sure.
Don't worry
Sure.
about fringe cases and like people love to be like,
They
you
love to
know,
be doctors when they're
they
not
love to be
doctors.
doctors and they love to
Yeah.
be like the whataboutism of like, oh well, I read this one study and
Right.
it
Right.
says and yeah,
Right. And
and
it
then like
went.
on the whole, if you look at everything and sort of shove it together and say like, what's the net effect here? Like it's something to be aware of, but it's not something to be worried about. And if you are someone who has had cancer or has a metabolic syndrome, like, yeah, like don't like
Sure.
think twice.
Right. Right.
But like otherwise healthy individuals, like, your body's pretty damn resilient.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think that,
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna do anything. I mean, like you like the real rage that I'm seeing with men my age and older is like people are like macro dosing creatine all of a sudden. Like, it's not just for
Okay.
bodybuilders anymore.
So
Like
let's
same
talk about
shit.
this. What's the
Same shit.
creatine? It's the
It
same as the
helps.
NAD.
And that's the same, but I'm like of the same mindset of people are trying to drug now your metabolism plus how you build muscle.
So it's the same idea
It's
of
the
it's
same
like,
idea. Like a supplement 101. Like they're just
and why do
trying.
you think they've become so hip and so cool right now? Like, what was
Because
the
Andrew
resurgence?
Huberman talked about that on his podcast. Like
Really? Like,
probably
right, right,
like
right. It's
what
just social media.
what people want is to drug their bodies.
Hmm.
It's crazy. And just look around. What we're looking for is how to optimize for health and longevity. Part of that is diet, part of that is exercise, and part of that will continue to be pharmaceuticals. As much as you hate the industry,
Right.
as much
It
as you
will be.
hate the manufacturers and the costs associated and health insurance and all this stuff, it is a crucial third part that will not go away.
But
And whether you get that medicine delivered at a day spa or your pharmacy or in a hospital, like
that's
you can
just
just
what
put that under one big umbrella. It's
yeah.
not going away.
And what do these effects have on your mental health? Are they doing tests on what it does to the mental wellness of you?
So let's go back to Ozempic.
Yeah.
There were conversations of some studies suggesting that it was making people more depressed.
Mm.
There were conversations of putting a black box warning, which is the increased probability of suicidality that all of the SSRIs have and all these other drugs that, you know, it's like, here, take Lexapro. It helps you from stop being depressed, but like also it might help you, you know,
Yeah.
come up with some crazy thoughts that make you want to hurt yourself. Like
Yeah.
it's all, you know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
Like you look at the labels for diagnostic depression, and it's like you might gain weight, you might lose a bunch of weight, you might sleep
Sure.
way more, you might not. Like it's
Right.
the extremes, right? So like it's not surprising to be like you're gonna shed a bunch of weight, you're gonna do all these stuff that's like a very extreme drug that like changes your metabolism. Like on the other end of that extreme, you might see those side effects. It's not unsurprising by any means. It might be a drug interaction. You know what
Huh.
I'm saying?
Sure.
Like a lot of these things are metabolism based. If you're someone who's on a SSRI,
Huh?
and then you start taking Ozempic, like there might be an interaction. Your body might be changing. You might be now in many ways like getting better because your
Mhm.
metabolism is improving, but you're still on
Mhm.
these drugs. So the side effect profile might just come out more. Like
Mhm.
again, like we talk about this in alcohol research. There's no such thing as a pure drinker. Every person in our studies also smokes. Like there's no
Wow.
person in the world, who is just a drinker or just a smoker.
Wow.
Like it's increasingly rare to find someone with an alcohol use problem who says, "No, the only thing I do is drink alcohol. I don't use any other drugs. I don't smoke. I don't do like, like they're all commingled."
Sure.
So like you get into this world now where like more people are going to be on Ozempic, which means that more depressed people are going to start taking Ozempic.
Mm.
And like we're going to start to uncover like maybe it does make things worse, but only if you have a pre-existing condition, or maybe it makes things better if you have this subset of pre-existing conditions. And like the only way we're ever going to find that out is to have more people take the drug.
Yeah.
So like it's sort of like
It's a
you
gamble.
know, it's a gamble and it's like a fuck around and find out, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you also like it's not like we're unaware of these things.
No, no,
And
no.
we're like looking for them, but like
But a
really
lot
the
of
only
people
way to
are
get
unaware
answer is
of
to
mental
run a
health.
trial.
Yes, but a lot of people are unaware of like what depression is, and they're going in there thinking that they're just going to lose weight because they've had this weight issue for a long time, or they've had diabetes and they've been told that this is what you should do, and
Sure,
then
but
all of a
like
sudden they're depressed and they're like, what is this feeling? It's so foreign to me, like, and I think that that's where it's scary, is if we're not implementing how to help.
like if you lost 60 pounds and had self-image issues that
You
were
probably
making your
always
mental
will have
health
self-image,
poor,
right?
like, and you probably still will always have self-image issues, but
Yeah,
also like, wouldn't you hypothesize that that might make you feel a little bit better? 'Cause you're looking better and you're feeling better. Like, it's
maybe.
complicated.
Yeah, each individual is different. I think that's what we learn,
So that's what I'm saying from like a drug effect specifically, like causal link for like mental health outcomes associated with taking these drugs. I don't know, but it's something we're thinking about and trying to understand, but
Sure.
like it's just still too early.
Okay, so now I want to just, before we finish this episode, I want to like do the like controversial, like, make America healthy again. Is there anything that you can say that you have agreed with, maybe, from this new, and I'll say in quotes, a movement? I don't know if this would be a movement or if it would be just an awareness or if it would be
I
just
mean,
new
no,
administration.
I mean, like,
Is there
let's
anything where you're like, yes, you know what? I do agree. We should not have, the red dye in gummy bears. Like, is there anything that you have like been like, you know what? I'm going to take a step back and take this moment and say, yes, I do agree with this. I think that we did need to do more research on this, or I think this is a good step forward.
let's put some bounds on this.
Yeah.
There are two people that are leading the health agenda in this country right now.
Right.
Bobby Kennedy Jr. is the head of Human Health and Services, which is
Uh-huh.
an umbrella organization that oversees everything from the NIH, the FDA, the CDC, the delivery of Medicare, Medicaid, like all of these sorts of things. Like if it deals with human health, we roll up, he's the guy at the top. The new director of the NIH is Jay Bhattacharya, who wrote the great something doctrine during COVID, who suggested that, otherwise healthy people probably shouldn't get the vaccine. They both have publicly come out and said that Make America Healthy Again is part of their initiative. They're taking a bunch of those sub institutes within Human Health and Services, rolling it into a new institute called Make America Healthy Again. It's moving from a movement of people talking about it and posting about it on the internet to becoming like actual government doctrine, and the world of we have an organization that is tasked to look at these sorts of things, and is enshrined in law and permeates through our actions is what we do here. There are many things that are very real that they're talking about that we need to look at. I have a personal opinion about vaccines
Huh?
that may be different from what they think. I
Mm-hmm.
have a personal opinion about the causes of autism that may or may not be linked to those vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say may or may not, I say that there is overwhelming evidence in the scientific literature that shows that vaccines do not cause autism.
Mm-hmm.
That is not my, like, I say that as
That
a
is the
opinion,
research.
but
Sure.
that's what the research currently
Okay.
says and has said for many, many years. We've been looking at these things all the time. Now, and we go down a step deeper. I'll use the vaccine example because we're on it. People want a single antigen vaccine against measles. What does that mean?
I don't know.
Exactly. You must be a scientist to start to
Okay.
understand what the actual, like, are there valid concerns? Yes. Do those concerns match the published literature? No. So we have to figure out how to square this circle. Is taking red dye out of the food supply going to make any meaningful change? I don't know, but we're going to study it. On its face, should you be eating synthetic oils that are
Probably
human
not.
made? Probably not. Like, like, again, personal opinion, not government
Sure.
scientist,
Yeah, yeah.
but like, like Chez Panisse and Berkeley, like the whole farm to table movement, like you've had people talking about this for
For
30,
years.
40
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
We need organically grown food that tastes good, that's locally produced, and we should be eating that. So, like, is taken from that point of view of like, I am an environmental steward and I think that people should have access to clean and healthy food that's locally grown. Yeah, take every synthetic dye out of the food. But like also like if they change the dye in Skittles from red dye 40 to some organic dye that's not petroleum based, I don't know. Like my takeaway is just like, don't fucking eat Skittles.
Yeah. Maybe they're not great. I love
So that's what I'm saying.
Skittles,
Like,
but
what
yeah.
trade off are you? You know what I'm saying? And it's not just junk food or caloric food or high
Sure.
nutrient. Like like these dyes go in a lot of things that you would perceive as healthy otherwise.
Sure. Sure.
So I'm not trying to pick on foods that are typically unhealthy or are
Well, what
low
about
cost.
like seed oils, for instance? Like,
I don't know.
yeah.
Probably not. Maybe.
Yeah. I think it's all
Like,
about like
that's what
do
I'm
what
saying.
you
Like,
think is
it's
best
just
for
like,
you and your family.
and you do what's best for you and your family. I'm employed to look at these sorts of things. I think they're valid questions to ask, but then like you have to ask yourself in the same way I made the quantity argument about NAD. If you're eating French fries 7 times a week, whether they're cooked in seed oil or beef tallow, your cholesterol is going to go up. Like,
Yeah.
what are those options?
Yeah. Yep.
I think that the Make America Healthy movement again is at the macro level something that we should all take very seriously.
I think so. Yeah.
The actual implementation of some of those specific things are things that scientists don't agree with. And I think that what we have to contend with is public trust in science hasn't actually dipped that much since pre-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask 100 people how much they trust science, just very generally,
Mm-hmm.
80% of them will say, yeah. 20% of them will say, I'm skeptical. Pre-pandemic, those numbers were 86 yes, 14 no. Like, like let's call it a 10% swing if people are more distrusting of scientists and vaccines and whatever has happened in the last 5 years. There was a global pandemic, if you weren't aware, like these
Yeah.
sorts of things. Like, we need to rebuild the trust, even though those numbers can be perceived as not being that bad.
Hmm.
A lot of people have a lot of questions. We should be in the business of answering them and like giving them good, rational,
And I think
understandable answers.
as someone who is not a
That's what I try
scientist,
and do.
like I want to be open and honest and be able to ask those questions to you. Like,
Like, judgment free. What I am
yeah,
concerned with is a small group of people who are loud about very specific things and then use those specific edge cases to make this larger argument that the whole system is broken. And it's not. Today, 2025, is the healthiest day that any American has ever lived in the history of the universe. And it will continue to trend in that direction.
yeah,
So, like, I understand that there are unmet needs. We don't have mechanisms for specific diseases that we ought to have mechanisms for. Like, we need to solve Alzheimer's. Like, we need to do these things, but we need to have a real conversation about what's wrong. And that's difficult, especially when you have a section of the population who doesn't trust the people who know the most about these things.
hmm,
And so the way that I look at this, and I think the way that the administration, whether you agree with them or disagree with them, their number one priority is to rebuild public trust in science. I think that's the
like I
correct
think that's
prioritization.
good, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean,
We can talk about the rollout. We can talk about what
yeah,
we're going to focus on first. We can talk about the specifics and the semantics of it all till we're blue in the face. But I agree that we need to build a healthier population. Like, how are you as a scientist, like, gonna say, no, you've got it wrong?
we got
And
to
like,
build the
why
trust.
are we shaming people who don't have degrees in biology or don't have PhDs in physics and neuroscientists for not knowing? Like, we need to become better communicators.
Sure, sure, sure.
So
And
like,
feel comfortable to ask the questions because I feel like there's so many times where I'm like, you hear these horror stories about like vaccines and you hear
mhm.
these horror stories about COVID and you're like, I'm scared to even ask because I don't want to
Dude,
be like labeled X, Y.
I wrote an opinion piece in 2018, 2019, that the title of the article was like, I sympathize with anti-vaxxers. I understand. Like, you've had a close friend, a family member, you look out into the world and you see rates of autism going up, and we don't have any answers for you. I get why you would fall into one of these categories where you think these
Sure,
things are poison.
sure.
My response to that shouldn't be to scream at you on Twitter. It
No,
should be to go into the lab and figure out the problem, to accurately measure it, to accurately come up with new treatments, like to help support, to do prevention, to make sure it doesn't happen in the future, and to build new mechanisms so that the people that do have these diagnoses, whether it is autism, Alzheimer's disease, whatever, better care and health and life outcomes.
hmm, hmm, hmm.
Like, I'm not in the business of
Shaming.
screaming at people or shaming or like, we need to do a better job. How you do that better job is a much different conversation I won't get into on this podcast, but, like, I
No, but
do think that, like,
that's why
you know what
I
I'm saying?
like
Michelle
when
Obama reinvents the food plate, you know, how many years ago, and now, like, you're so far politically on the other ends of the spectrum, but, like, if you just connect the circle, we're still right there.
we're still right there. And I think that that's why I like having these conversations with you and asking you about the new hot fads and trends with diet and with medication and stuff, because these conversations, like I said, a lot of people, such as myself, love to know the history of TikTok and the Bible of TikTok, of
For sure.
how, things work and things don't work. And you get scared and then you get in your head and you spin and you're not the doctor and you're not the scientist. But then maybe you do know, such as me, I do know people who have had really bad interactions to medications. I was one of them. I had a really bad reaction to an antidepressant because I was given the wrong medication. I was made to my highs and my lows, which caused me to have suicidal ideations and suicidal actions, which was not me. So the trust that I have in doctors and the trust that I have in scientists is very cautious. It's not an open, book thing. And I'm very honest about that with people. It takes me a long time to really, I want to do the research for myself. I want to hear the research. I want to read the research. I'm someone that wants to know everything before I jump to a conclusion and before I jump on a fad or a phase or
Oh yeah.
whatever it may be. So that's why I like these conversations
I just
and I
like
appreciate them. And I know other people appreciate me being open about it to talk about with you being open about it.
like let's play this out.
Yeah.
Like 20 years from now,
Yeah.
like people love to be like, "Oh, you did your own research?" Like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a stigma associated with people who
Yeah.
say this.
Yeah.
We're building AI systems that are increasingly better and better of
Every day.
every day. Like, you're going to be able to get to the point where you can do your own research. The question is what data is it pulling?
Hmm.
Like, my job, I think, is to flood the market with repeatable, truthful, and human understandable scientific studies. And I know that there is going to be an increasingly good service that aggregates that information and makes it understandable to the general population. Like type into ChatGPT, what is a single antigen vaccine? What's the history of how many antigens were in vaccines? Like you're going to get understandable answers now.
Right. Right.
Whereas that information used to be locked up
And hidden. Yeah.
and hidden and hard to access and hard to understand. Like we're gonna get to the point here where like if you're trying to hide something, we might not know what you're hiding, but we're gonna be able to figure out that you're hiding it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I want people to trust us not because we say you should trust us. Like I want people to read the work that I do, not only other scientists, but like people who are inclined to understand what I'm doing and say, yeah, I believe it.
I love that.
And like there's a way to do that.
Yeah.
And like,
We have to build
you
the
know,
trust.
there will be road bumps in this process. There will be scientists that protest. There will be people who push back. Like, I get it.
Mhm.
And then this isn't just like a one-way street of like the scientists need to do better. Like, this is like, we're going to have to figure this out through policy and politics and working back and forth and us saying, no, we're not going to do that, and us saying, yes, we're going to do that, and them making concessions, and us like, we're going to figure it out. It will be a back and forth. It should be a two-way street. That's how you
Mhm.
get to the best solution. You cannot do science by decree as much as you
Mhm.
would like to think that you can. But like, I think from like, to answer the initial question, like, there's a lot of stuff at the macro level that they're getting right. The execution will be the thing that you should look at and look for. But in the most apolitical way. Like, yeah, like we need to do this.
Mhm.
And like, look, it's a zero-sum game. Money doesn't grow on trees. We can acknowledge the fact that we're in a budget crisis for science. Look at what's happening at Harvard. Like, I understand a lot of people are like, who cares? Harvard has a $50 billion endowment, but like, this stuff matters.
Mhm.
And, like, you might not care about Harvard, but like, what happens when they do this at New Mexico State? Like, there's there will be ripples that we'll have to figure out. It's a very chaotic and turbulent time right now, but like I think that we will make it through this early projection,
Mhm.
and then what happens next is actually what I'm more interested in.
Mm.
Like I'm not interested in looking backwards and arguing the semantics of what happened since 2020.
You're ready to
I'm
go to the future.
interested in how we're actually going to create new medicines and do like things that matter.
Miracles.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that people want more, but like to toot our own horns, like, like look at health and human disease and life expectancy is like now compared to 100 years ago.
Mhm.
Like we didn't figure out that DNA existed until what, the 50s?
So we're moving.
But we're moving. Like if you want better answers, pour more money into the system.
Mhm.
Like give us more constraints, like make the education system but do this or other thing. But like, the reason you go to the moon is because you pour a bunch of money into NASA and say, go build some rockets. Like, you want to cure Alzheimer's disease? Like, write me a blank check and give me 10 years and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but I
And we
understand
will.
you
And we
can't do
will.
that. You can't do that, but like,
No, but we
the
will find these
logic
things
of
out.
like, yeah. So like, I'm optimistic in a world where there's a lot of pessimism right now, and
Mhm.
like we'll figure this stuff out. But like I think my job is to do good science and science that can be replicated in hands outside of my own hands, and like focus on things that actually improve people's health. And I think that if I do that enough times in a row, that people will start to trust me.
Well, David, I trust you and I
You
love your
shouldn't.
optimism. And I love that you are back on the pod. And I'm glad that we have this conversation. And I really appreciate your openness and you you answering my questions, whether they may be the most absurd things in the world or not.
I like your
You
absurd
don't,
questions.
well, you don't judge. And I think that that's what's so important. And I think that that's something we can learn and we can move forward with in all of our lives is like not judging each other for just asking a question. I think we tell kids all the time, ask the questions. Like, if you want to know, ask a question, ask a question. We're dealing with toddlers right now. We know this. Like, do you want to know what this is? What is the, they're always doing that.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Why?
why
Why?
can't we, yeah,
Why? Why? Why?
why can't we as adults continue that on and ask those
Yeah.
questions
I
and not be
explained
afraid?
light to Harper as a I was like, "These are what photons are," the other day. I'm like, "She like "Too," and Annie's like looking at me and being like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. She asked why. I'm gonna tell her."
Tell her why. She wants to know the truth. Like, I love that. David, I'm looking forward to our next episode. We'll have more fan questions and more exciting things